All right. So I want you to imagine this. Your favorite online shopping site just got an update. You're excited to peruse around and would also like to make a purchase today. You instinctively look for the search bar to find the particular item that you wanted, but alas, the search bar is no longer in the same spot that you remember it being. Instead, there's an unknown icon, and you're not really sure if you should click on it, what it stands for. You take a guess that this might be the icon you need to click on in order for the search bar to appear, but you're not 100% sure. You hover over the icon, but there's no further information pertaining to its purpose. You ultimately click on the icon and find that it does indeed open up the search bar, but you wish that a label for the icon or some helpful hint had been provided in order to save you time and effort. This is where tooltips come in. So tooltips are a brief informative message that appears when a user interacts with an element in a graphical user interface. Tooltips are usually initiated in one of two ways. You can initiate it through a mouse hover gesture or through a keyboard hover gesture. They disappear when the user clicks the control or move their mouse away. Tooltips help the user understand unknown or unfamiliar objects that may not be directly described in the UI. Think of them as a just-in-time support. They provide enough information to the user when they need it without requiring extra effort from the user. Tooltips also help reduce the screen clutter since they appear on a hover state and they go away. So instances when the tooltips can be used, they can be used in form fields by providing additional information on how to complete the form field, but not necessarily used as a replacement for the instructions. They can be used for unlabeled icons, describing the purpose of the icon, like in the scenario example that I gave earlier. Or they could be used for rarely used features, additional information on rarely used or context-specific features. Think of maybe an up and down arrow in an app whose purpose is not necessarily, the purpose of the up and down arrows are not necessarily used for scrolling, so that would be very helpful. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how tooltips are used on a plethora of apps and platforms that you may have seen. So on Google Docs, they provide a tooltip when you're hovering over the document title to inform the user that they can rename the file by clicking on the text in the input field. There's not necessarily any distinct instruction on how to rename the Google Doc file, as most of you have seen in Google Docs. This most likely would take up too much space and clutter their UI, so they have opted for a tooltip. And then we can find this example within Tux. So after a user logs in and lands on the home page, they can start an activity. The activity types are described with icons that may not always be intuitive to the user. So to aid in the understanding of the icons within Tux, we have added tooltips, which help describe what each icon represents. For example, this icon, the A with the circle, represents an accessibility activity. So when the user hovers over the icon, they are informed that this is an activity within accessibility. Another way that tooltips are used are actually to instruct users on what keyboard commands they can use within a toolbar. So for example, toolbars typically provide tooltips for their users to learn the keyboard shortcuts that each feature within that toolbar provides. So in this example, bold, command B. So some best practices and some reminders when using tooltips. Do not use a tooltip as a replacement for good design. Instead, aid the user and don't create more problems for the user. As far as placements go, tooltips should be placed near the object being hovered, usually at the pointer's tail or head if possible. You don't want to completely cover the item that you're providing the tooltip for. Use it as a helpful aid. So text within a tooltip must be helpful and should not just repeat what the users can already see on the screen. So for example, with a print button, the button should not have a tooltip with the text print because it already says print. However, a better example would be a printer icon that has a tooltip with the text print. Keep it brief. Tooltips disappear, so avoid using them again to provide directionally actionable information like field requirements. And then provide discoverability. Tooltips lack visual cues, so provide them for all similar objects. Thank you so much for tuning in today.